This video is probably going to be a lot of review for you because we're going to talk about ratios, proportions, and the only new thing is probably going to be this thing called a geometric mean. To get started, a ratio is simply a comparison of two numbers, usually by division. And you'll see these written three common ways would be A to B, or as a fraction, A over B, or as A colon B. So if you're writing a ratio, these are the three main ways. In this class, we're going to look at them as fractions for the most part. A proportion then is two ratios that are set equal to each other. And just as an example, we could have the ratio A over B equal to C over D. And we're going to look at solving some proportions in just a moment here. The last thing is called the geometric mean, and that looks like A over X equals X over B. And in this equation here, A and B are just two numbers. So where A and B are real numbers. And at the end of the lesson, we'll look at solving some of those. So just as a couple of quick examples, we're going to write some ratios. First, for the number of doors to windows for this room. So if we include the two windows by the door up front, the one in the back makes 3 windows in this room, and then there are actually 2 doors in this room. So that ratio would be 2 to 3, or you could write it as a fraction, or you can write it with a colon. All right, the next example, we have the ratio of the number of dogs to cats. So if you look in this pie chart, the number of dogs that people chose was 20, and cats is 18. And then we can simplify that by dividing both the numerator and denominator by 2, giving us 10 nights. All right, let's look at some more ratios here. So in number 3, we're asked to simplify 30 yards to 22 yards. Start by writing it as a fraction. Notice that both 30 and 22 are divisible by 2, which gives us 15 to 11. Now, just be careful with this because your units need to be the same. So we're going to change 1 meter into 100 centimeters. And then we can simplify. So start with 45 over 100. And both of these are divisible by 5, giving us 9/20. And then lastly, again, our units need to agree with each other. So I'm going to keep feet, writing this as 4 feet, and then 12 inches is 1 foot. So we actually end up with our answer of 4 to 1. All right, so these 3 fractions are all simplified. We're going to move on into solving proportions. Now, you've probably done this in the past, but just as a quick review here, to solve a proportion, we do what we call cross multiplication. We're going to take 15 times x, and we're going to set that equal to 4 times 75. Now let's simplify that. 15x equals 4 times 75. If you plug that in a calculator, will give you 300. And now to get x by itself, all we need to do is divide both sides by 15. Those will cancel, and 300 divided by 15 is 20, and that's our final answer. In 7, we get a little more complicated here, so we're going to start the same way, taking 21 times y. And now here we're going to take 30 and multiply it by y plus 3. In this case, we need to distribute this 30 to both y and 3. And that's going to give us 30y plus 90. Now we can solve. Let's subtract 30y from both sides. So these cancel. 21y minus 30y is negative 9y equals 90. And then if we divide by negative 9, we'll end up with y equals 90 divided by negative 9 is negative 10. All right, so there is our answer. Okay, the next few examples we're going to look at some story problems here, so we need to come up with our own proportions. In number 8, the ratio of boys to girls on the bus is 5 to 3. They tell us there are 24 girls on the bus. How many kids are on the bus? So let's make a ratio of boys over girls, which we know is 5 boys to every 3 girls. And we're going to set up a proportion. So we don't have 3 girls on the bus, we have 24. And we need to figure out how many boys are on the bus. So this proportion we can now solve. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is cross multiply. 3 times x is 3x. 5 times 24 is 120. And if we divide both sides by 3, we end up with x equals 40. So that is the number of boys on the bus. But the question is asking how many kids total are on the bus. So if we just add the number of boys plus the number of girls, that's going to give us the total of 64 kids. Okay. Let's look at one more word problem with ratios. The length to width ratio of a mural is 5 to 12. If the shortest side of the mural is 20 feet, what are the actual dimensions? So suppose we have this little scale model that's 5 by 12. The actual side of this mural that's going to be painted has its shortest dimension is 20, and we want to know how long is that mural going to be based on this scale. There are multiple ways to set this up, so I'm going to set up 5 to 12 equals 20 to x. And we can cross multiply now. So if we go ahead and do that, 5 times x is 5x. 12 times 20 is 240. And if we divide by 5, we end up with 48. So that tells us the mural is 48 feet by 20 feet. So those are the dimensions. Okay, let's throw some work with triangles in here. The extended ratio of the angles of a triangle is 7 to 5 to 3. We're going to figure out how much each angle has to be. So we don't know exactly how many degrees this angle is, but we know it's 7x, 5x, and 3x. And those numbers are just coming from this extended ratio. Well, we know that those 3 angles have to add up to 180 degrees. So if we combine these terms, we end up with 15x equals 180, and dividing by 15 will give us our x value of 12. And now we just have to take that value of 12 and plug it in for x to find our 3 angle measures. 7 times 12 is going to give you 84 degrees as your largest angle. 5 times 12 gives you 60 degrees. And then your smallest angle, 3 times 12, is 36 degrees. Okay, lastly we're going to finish up with something called the geometric mean. And if you recall from earlier in these notes, that's always in the form a over x equals x over b. So in this case, our a and b are 20 and 5, so we just fill those in. We solve this the same way we solved previously, so we're just going to cross multiply. X times x is x squared. 20 times 5 is 100. And now to get x by itself, we just have to take the square root. So we get x equals 10. And for the geometric mean, it's always positive, so don't worry about a negative 10. Okay, same idea here, number 12. Fill in for a and b. So we have 42 over x equals x over 70. And again, cross multiply. So x times x is x squared. And 42 times 70 is a pretty big number. We actually end up with 2,940. Now this isn't going to be a nice number. If you plug the square root of 2,940 into a calculator, you're going to get approximately 54.22 is the geometric mean of 42 and 70.